Good afternoon, everyone. I am Julie Gaymar Williams, President of the Chamber of Commerce, and on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce and their board, I'd like to welcome you to our our luncheon for 2007. I'd also like to thank all of you for your support, and because of such great support today, as you can see, we have a sold-out crowd. So thank you for your patience and waiting while we got the table set up. And I think if you guys are in the back, there's plenty of places to sit up here after we get going too. So thank you. Two quick things before I introduce our Master of Ceremonies today. Number one, for you chamber members, the chamber board has recently approved a new tiered membership for the chamber, and that's going to be beneficial for all of you. You're going to start seeing things in our newsletter about that. But what I really encourage you to do is get a hold of Kim Luttrell, our executive director, because there's many benefits, but the benefits are limited in number on certain areas. And so give her a call and she'll come out and visit with you about those membership benefits. And I think all of you are going to find that, very exciting and beneficial to all of us. Secondly, you'll see on your center cards on the table about a presentation we're going to be doing following our question and answer session. As you can see, many of our military people are here with us today, so I strongly encourage you to stay for some recognition awards of people who have been outstanding in this area of service. With that, I'd like to introduce our Master of Ceremonies, Doug Lawrence from Mountain West Bank, and Doug is our interim chair for the Community Affairs Committee, and that is the committee that has gone to such great depths to put this on. So thank you, Doug, and your committee.
Thank you, Julie. First, I'd like to introduce the head table. On my left, Major General Randall Mosley, the Adjutant General, Montana National Guard. Major General Alan Bell, Deputy Commander, United States Army Reserve. Susan Ryan, Chair, Montana Committee for Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve. On my right, John Engen, Mayor, City of Missoula. Barbara Evans, Chair of Missoula County Commissioners. And you've met Julie. So we'll have two State of the Missoula presentations, then we'll have a question and answer, and it's my job to keep us on schedule. Our first speaker is County Commissioner Barbara Evans. Barbara was born in Cheyenne, Wyoming. She came to Missoula in 1940 and graduated from Missoula County High School. She has spent most of her life in Missoula, becoming a very active force in the community and local government. She is presently serving her 5th consecutive 6-year term as Missoula County Commissioner. She was the first woman elected as Commissioner in 1978. Barbara is currently, or in the past, served on Judicial Standards Commission, the Airport Board, the County Park Board, the Missoula Development Authority, and the Transportation Policy Coordinating Committee. In her 28 years as County Commissioner, she has achieved many things for Missoula County. Most recently, she has led efforts to remove the Milltown and restore the confluence of the Blackfoot and Clarkfoot rivers. Barbara is married to Alan Evans. They have 4 children and 8 grandchildren. Please welcome Commissioner Barbara.
Good afternoon. You have no idea how happy I am to be here today and give this speech. The last time I was slated to give this speech, I had to give my speech to Commissioner Carey to read for me because my husband had a heart attack. So this time I'm really glad I have no reason and no excuse not to be here. I want to bring to your attention we have a lot of displays in the back. Missoula County is so large and there is so many things going on, it is impossible for me to give it all to you in such a short time. I'd like to tell you that we are in very good financial shape. We're not rolling in money, but we are in a stable condition. And all of the following accomplishments that I'm about to give you, you can thank our staff for, because we have a great staff, a lot of wonderful employees that work very hard to provide service to all of you. We are a $78 million organization comprised of 54 budget funds and have over 700 full-time, part-time, and seasonal employees, making it the largest government in county government in Montana. Missoula's economy is booming, and rapid growth of 3.5 to 3.8% is putting the greatest strain on county government as it stretches our ability to maintain the services. There also is rapid growth in the trade area. We have about 360,000 in what we call the trade area. That puts an additional demand on our roads, our sheriff, and criminal justice system. We are very pleased to announce once again that we've had a very successful year in regards to the development park. The park is located just north of the airport. It covers 450 acres and is a mixture of industrial uses, parks, trail, and housing. The development park has more than paid for itself. We paid about $1.5 million for the 450 acres, and we have made over $13 million on it. Now, you understand that it all wasn't profit that all went in our pocket. Some of it went for infrastructure in the park. But if we hadn't bought it, we wouldn't have that infrastructure. There are a few more lots to sell, and there seems to be plenty of interest in the remaining lots. One of our major successes in the park is, of course, DirecTV. The Missoula County staff worked very hard to dot the I's and cross the T's to get it done. Maynann Ellingson, our bond counsel, was also instrumental in achieving its success. Now, you're going to call this speech the jump-in-the-box speech because I'm going to ask a lot of people to stand. And at the moment, I'd like to ask all the Missoula County staff and employees to stand, and also the folks from DirecTV. Please stand. The support for DirecTV extends to the governor, to other state agencies, and to our Congressman Max Baucus. And there is one person that I want to make sure I recognize, and that is Dick King from MAEDC. Our financial support for MAEDC has been very well placed, very well rewarded. I thank you, Dick, and I'd like to ask you to stand. And is Mark Capel here? Mark is the site director for DirecTV. I'd like to thank him for all of the efforts they made to come here, for the 800 plus jobs that they currently have, aiming at 1,000. They have just had their millionth call in Missoula, which is pretty good. They run 40 shifts, and they are soon to have 56 shifts when they are fully employed. Can you imagine running 56 shifts and scheduling people for 56 shifts? I can't think of anything worse. Thank you, Mark. For several years now, we have been aiming and working to achieve the removal of the Milltown Dam. There has been much earthwork done, and there are photos on the table showing the beginning of the Milltown Dam when it was put in using horses, and I think we have some more up-to-date photos there for you to look at. Should also tell you that these displays will be available after the presentations today because they have the hotel room until at least 4 o'clock. So please stand around, look at them, and get the benefit of them. We now have some very difficult decisions to make in regards to the Milltown Dam, and that's the bridges that are in the area. There's 5 bridges, which is the Old Truss Bridge, a railroad bridge, 2 highway bridges, and a potential pedestrian bridge, which would replace the Black Truss Bridge in the same location. Well, the folks out there aren't really thrilled with the idea of losing their bridge. They have a group of folks called the Save Our Bridge, and they don't want to lose it. But if we spent a lot of money shoring it up and doing all the repairs that would be needed, when we'd be finished, we'd still have a bridge about 100 years old, or thereabouts, and would have spent a lot of money and still have just an old bridge. We have received $975,000 from the Upper Clark Fork Remediation and Restoration Committee for a pedestrian bridge in its place. Well, a suggestion was made recently that we're going to take some serious look at, and that is that we remove the Old Truss Bridge, we slide it west, which doesn't put it over water unless they extend it out on that side, and leave that as a community place that they want to enjoy. So we're going to look seriously at that. We have to decide whether or not to put in the pedestrian bridge or whether to throw our money, if it's possible to do that with all the problems that can arise trying to move money around in categories, and make the highway bridges much more aesthetically pleasing, much more of a gateway to the community, other than, as has been called, a vanilla bridge. We're working with MDT and EPA to join with them to decide what to do there, and I'm sure you'll hear more about this in the coming weeks. We're still aiming to have the dam removal done by 2008 or thereabouts. I believe there will be an observation point up above the dam that will allow people to go up, look down, and see it as it's being deconstructed. I think that'll be really worthwhile. And I would like to ask Peter Nielsen to stand. Over here. Without Peter, this would never have gotten done. The Missoula International Airport has been in the process of working on their facility, and there are photos on the tables back there, and I think Kelly Smith is here to answer any questions. You can see their progress. The terminal expansion and the security relocation project is about 90% done. They have finished a ramp reconstruction at the east of Minuteman's maintenance facility, and they have been selected by TSA to receive 2 explosive detection devices, which will help them to speed up the passenger service in the terminal, so there'll be less lines. And this one I think is fairly exciting. They have no pictures of it, but for the first time the airport has tried the use of liquid carbon dioxide to abate fog at the airport. It appears that when the conditions are right, they can successfully keep the airport operational. During the 4-day stretch of fog this year, they were able to operate all but 2 flights. Last year, during a similar 4-day stretch, they had to cancel 49 flights. So I think what they've done is really spectacular. They are also the only airport in the state of Montana showing growth in passenger travel. In April, the airport hopes to let a bid for the resurfacing of runway 1129, which is the major runway. They will mill off the existing surface of the runway and add a 2.5-inch asphalt lift on it. Full length, full width. And John's really worried I'm going to smack him here.
Wouldn't be the first time.
This will take about 30 days, and most of the work will be done at night. They hope to have it done by fall of this year. The Art Museum has also opened a beautiful new facility. It is a great addition to downtown Missoula, and there are photos and brochures in the back for you. Unfortunately, not all the news is good. Montana is the 2nd highest state for suicide. That's not a distinction we like. We must bring these numbers down, not just because they're numbers, because there's human tragedy every time there is a suicide. The Health Department has sought and received a $47,000 grant for suicide prevention. This is the first money ever allocated by the federal government for suicide prevention. Montana is among the first states to win the award, and certainly if we weren't right up there, we probably wouldn't have got it. They will provide free suicide prevention training to any interested agency or group, so if you're interested, please contact the Health Department. And that doesn't mean, are you ready to commit suicide? It means helps you to find ways to prevent it because you will recognize signs. Several years ago, we received a $5 million appropriation from Congress to begin planning for a Miller Creek Bridge. It is the only way in and out of the area. And it is not acceptable because the back up at the highway is just not acceptable. The Y at the upper and lower Miller Creek is not a safe intersection, and it must be fixed. FHWA was the agency to study the problem and recommend a fix. Studies have been ongoing, and as yet we do not have a final decision as to what option they have chosen. It appears that the decision they choose may not be one satisfactory to the city or the county. And if that happens, we'll be left to make the decision ourselves and use our own funds. There's no guarantee we would get federal funds even if we all agree on the decision, so we may end up doing it ourselves. I certainly hope we can move it along and get something done very soon. Growth and the increased traffic are the 2 major issues that seem to distress most everyone. It used to be that we'd get an occasional subdivision that was contentious. Now nearly all of them are. Now no one, it used to be NIMBY, not in my backyard. Now I think it's banana. Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything. The more growth there is, the more frustration there is. At the same time, we wish we had a broader tax base so more people could help carry the load. I remember once I was in the library and we heard this lady say to the clerk, "Can you tell us how to get to Southgate Mall?" And so my husband and I said, "Well, we're going right by there. We'll be happy to give you a ride." So we got in the car and we were on the road, and she says, "I sure hope nobody else comes here." And I said, "How long have you been here?" She said, "I just got here. I'm not unpacked yet." So we don't want less service, just we want less taxes, but the same or more service. Growth will continue. There is no legal way for us to stop it. The government and the laws do not allow us to deprive people of their property rights. So what we need to do is identify the things that make our county a great place to live and do everything within the law to protect those things, but not at the expense of common sense or the certainty of lawsuits, which you and I would pay for. The county has initiated in that order riparian regulations, land-sensitive zoning, lakeshore regulations, highway beautification regulations, wildlife corridors, the decay ordinance, and area zoning. And you know, nowadays we have people coming and saying, "We want to be zoned," people who hated the Z word before. And we put on the ballot $10 million for open space. Well, 70% of the people voted for it. Now what that says to me is they want to keep open space enough that they're willing to pay for it. We also created and are funding an operational rural initiatives office. The department is composed of staff members whose expertise is working side by side with rural landowners and communities in the 8 planning regions outside of the Missoula Valley. They cooperate with landowners, state, tribal, federal, and non-governmental agencies to collectively address the rapidly changing economy and the land use issues. The $10 million bond issue is intended to protect our rivers, our lakes, our wildlife habitat, and our working ranches and timberland, while concurrently providing access along rivers, managing for growth, and helping to preserve these things for our children and grandchildren. The city and county work together to accomplish this. The bond proceeds are to be split evenly between the city and the county, $5 million each. One of our major accomplishments in regards to the rural needs was the creation of the Rural Initiatives Office. The rural areas are now getting the service they need and they want. The City and County Office of Planning and Grants will welcome a new director on the 29th of this month. His name is Roger Millar, and he comes to us with great experience in both the public and the private sector. He is a registered engineer, has a master's degree in planning, has experience with ski resorts, and a lot more. We're very pleased with his decision to relocate here. For those of you who use Fort Missoula Park, you'll be glad to know that the restroom has arrived, and it will be functional this spring. As you no doubt know, the issue of horse racing is still somewhat up in the air. It doesn't look promising, however. The insurance costs and availability are problems we may not be able to solve or to afford. No one wants to take it away from the racing fans, but there is a point where we just may not be able to afford it. Their revenues from the last fair were pretty close to projections, but there's no way to predict what will happen if we can't have racing. Other significant county accomplishments were courthouse renovations, such as walkway between the annex and courthouse completed, ADA access for voting for Woodman School, Potomac School, Sunset School, Swan Valley School, and Clinton School were completed. We landscaped the front of the courthouse, and there are some pictures in back of that. 911 communication sites have been updated, and there's also photos of that. Much time has been spent planning for a public safety and administration building. The health department has begun work on an obesity program, and the county has been working on a welfare program. The auditor's office is busy working on 9 internal audits and processing nearly 20,000 claims and issuing almost that many checks. Public Works has completed the Frenchtown Walkway, the paving of Dead Man's Gulch, the Elk Creek Bridge, Spring Hills Drive was constructed. They also operate a full-service building codes department. They design bridges, trails, fishing accesses, do dust abatements, pave roads, and too many other things to list. Animal Control is doing a wonderful job of operating our shelter, holding spay-neuter clinics, adopting out most adoptable animals, which was almost 700, and returning animals to owners, which was about 600, answering complaints of citizens, almost 3,000, so you can see they're kept busy. Dogs and cats get an awful lot of attention. The Extension Office is busy helping to establish a homegrown program to help local produce growers improve the sustainability of their farms and ranches. They gave a mini-series on Alzheimer's diseases to explain the nature of the disease, local resources, nutrition, financial and legal issues, and reducing stress. They have given financial planning seminars, including estate planning, wills, trusts, and probate to interested folks. They also operate our weed district programs. The jail is, of course, full. I consider that really job security for everyone who works at the detention center and our sheriff's office. They are now licensed for their infirmary and licensed for their food service. And I'll tell you, there are a lot of jobs in the world I wouldn't want, and being a detention officer or a sheriff in today's world is one. The courts are jammed up and trying to keep their heads above water. We're pleased that the district court judges have agreed to do video arraignments, which will save us significantly on transport costs. The commissioners are busy hearing subdivisions, trying to deal with traffic problems. You know, we had years ago planned a grid road system that would go west of Reserve, because we knew that that was a very busy growing area and we needed more ways to take the traffic off of Mullen and Reserve. So we planned a grid system and we put the concepts in and told the developers, when you're going to develop something, you're going to have to do a road that's in the general area of what we're doing here, thinking that that would be a wonderful thing. And it is a wonderful thing, except that the people who live out there don't want anybody driving in front of them. So we have this little problem. Commissioner Carey continues to work on two special projects close to his heart. One is the development of a senior housing cooperative, hopefully on the old Champion Mill site. The other is a creation of a sister county relationship with County Cork in Ireland. And he and I want to take a trip over there to make sure that works. Missoula, Mineral, and Ravalli counties have worked together for almost 5 years on economic development through the Bitterroot Economic Development District. We were successful in getting a $50,000 planning grant from EDA last year and are working on an economic development strategy on our 3-county region. We hired Marcy Allen as a coordinator for the district. For more information, go to the website, call our office and get the website. That's about all I have time for. You'll have to come again next year and hear Commissioner Curtis give you the rest of the story.
Thank you, Barbara. Our next speaker is John Engen. A Missoula native, John graduated from Hellgate High School. He attended the University of Montana, where he earned a bachelor's degree in journalism. An award-winning writer and editor, John's newspaper career began at age 17 when he was invited to write a humor column for the Missoulian. He continued to write this weekly column for the next 17 years, working his way through all levels of the Missoulian. This experience led him to other aspects of the media, and most recently into his own advertising and publishing company, Engen Creative. He and his wife, Tracy, also have a family-owned travel agency. John has been very active in Missoula, serving on numerous boards and councils: Missoula Food Bank, Missoula Humane Society, Missoula Downtown Association, First Night Missoula, Young Audiences of Western Montana, Camp Make a Dream, and Play Ball Missoula, to name just a few. John and Tracy live with a greyhound and a cat in the Rattlesnake Valley. Please welcome Mayor Engen.
There's a lot of me for a little alley behind me, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. It's been a year since we last met to discuss the state of Missoula, and I'm pleased to report on this fine, cold January day that our city is strong. We're financially sound. We deliver services with professionalism and pride. We're building and growing and planning for a community that's a great place to live and work and raise a family today, and will be a great place to live and work and raise a family 100 years from now. I'd like to thank the members of the Missoula City Council who are here today for their thoughtful and relentless work on behalf of our constituents. It's hard work, and they deserve a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. I've had the privilege of serving as your mayor for a little more than a year now, and I'm often asked if the job is what I expected it to be. The answer, serving as mayor is more complicated, more challenging, and more rewarding than I could have imagined, and I have a fairly active imagination. I'm not sure how many middle-aged men look forward to each working day in the office, but I do. I'm mayor of my hometown, Missoula, Montana, the best small city in the West. It's okay to applaud at that, too. Thank you for the opportunity to work with you. And you should be the first to know that I plan on applying for this job again on the first day of filing in 2009 for the municipal election. A review of my calendar since January 2006 reveals that I participated in about 1,200 scheduled meetings, many of them with folks who take my open door policy seriously. I'm glad. I've also met with many of you when you're out for lunch or having a beer, not that I've been having a beer, enjoying a hike or shopping for groceries, raising a paddle at an auction, or attending a council meeting. And from those many meetings, I've learned that it's more important for me to listen than it is for me to talk. It's also important that folks know what's going on at City Hall and around the community. That's why we hired Ginny Merriam, the City of Missoula's Communications and Public Information Officer. As a reporter for 20 years, Ginny was a true believer in the public's right to know and understand what its government is doing. At her desk in City Hall, she remains a true believer, and we're lucky to have her. Ginny, please stand up if you would, please. Also tucked away in the mayor's office is our Chief Administrative Officer, Bruce Bender, whose incredible institutional memory keeps me out of trouble almost every day. Thank you, Bruce, if you'd like to stand up. So folks, in 2006, we made some headway on a number of things that I've been talking with you about since 2005. Citizens of Missoula and our neighbors throughout Missoula County, thank you, Barbara, elected to invest in our future and passed a $10 million open space bond in November. Now both the city and the county can enjoy the rewards of community-based conservation of the land that matters to us. We've asked for proposals from professionals to help streamline our zoning and subdivision regulations so that folks can understand them. Whether you're a neighbor, architect, reporter, builder, plan reviewer, attorney, city council member, or mayor, I hope to report to you next year that our rules and regulations make sense for our community and make sense to the folks who use them. A few other things we tackled in 2006. On the transportation front, our Russell Street, South 3rd Street transportation project restarted with a public hearing in October. The first phase is to widen Russell Street to 4 lanes, including a bridge, which is today the last 2-lane motorized traffic bridge over the Clark Fork River. Working with our federal and state partners, we aim to relieve congestion on Russell and 3rd Streets, make it easier and safer for people to travel by car, bicycle, and on foot. Senator Max Baucus put $6 million in the bank for a bridge. We need to find the rest and get that project done. Of course, folks, Russell connects directly to a street we call West Broadway, which you may or may not be familiar with. We mentioned that in passing once or twice in 2006. And while completing the state's 3-lane project, we were able to put in a traffic light in 2006, a light that was long awaited by folks who live in that neighborhood. And we're continuing to discuss the future of that corridor tomorrow and Thursday evenings as part of our charrette process. I continue to believe that West Broadway can be beautiful and functional, and with your help, we'll get there. Sidewalks and bike lanes are being improved and extended in the heart of the city. In the university area and on our north side, neighborhoods have participated in sidewalk projects to reconstruct old, deteriorated walkways and install ADA-compliant corner ramps and fill in missing links for folks on foot. We created some new bike lanes on Broadway, A bike route was posted from the county portion of Expressway along Old Grant Creek and Rogers Street by the cemetery to connect it to Scott Street. We've installed 9 new neighborhood traffic calming circles in the Slant Street neighborhood and on South 4th Street West in response to citizens' requests. And major roads are continuing to be under construction west of Reserve Street that are the product of cooperation between the city and the county. You'll be hearing more about George Elmer Drive and Engen Boulevard, both of which are designed to relieve congestion on Reserve Street and Mullen Road. As Missoula grows, ensuring public safety continues to be our first priority, and toward that end, our Missoula Fire Department is wrapping up construction of Fire Station number 5 in Linda Vista. We built it actually for Barbara.
Thank you very much.
Next, we'll annex you. The small print giveth and taketh away, as they say. And no, I'm not going to annex her, so please don't be afraid. Next up, we'll build a new modern fire station to replace an obsolete facility on Mount Avenue, and we'll remodel our 39th Street station. All of this is possible because of Missoula voters' continued commitment to our community. Our fine fire department, under the leadership of Chief Tom Steenberg, Assistant Chief Mike Painter, and Assistant to the Chief Jason Deal, completed a comprehensive master fire plan. We expect the City Council to adopt that plan soon. With a new fire station, of course, comes the need to staff the facility. In January, we hired 4 probationary firefighters to start that process. You know, our firefighters, ladies and gentlemen, are in exceptional shape and aren't afraid of a little competition. Missoula Fire Department sent a team to the annual Firefighter Stair Climb in Seattle as a fundraiser for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. There in Seattle, firefighters in full protective clothing and self-contained breathing apparatus are individually timed as they race to the observation deck in the Bank of America Tower. That's the second tallest building west of the Mississippi, and takes 69 flights of stairs. That's 1,311 steps to reach the observation deck overlooking the city. I remained in Missoula to answer the phone. As an aside, folks, I'm not a big fan of vision statements because many I don't find to be particularly meaningful. That said, I love the Missoula Fire Department's vision statement. Protect property, save lives, ease pain and suffering. That's fantastic. And they do it. I continue to be proud of our police force. This year we added more officers for better enforcement. This fall we settled our new police contract in the shortest time in recent memory and in a very positive bargaining atmosphere of mutual respect. Ladies and gentlemen, our officers have been the lowest paid among Montana police forces in our big cities. Missoula was 10.7% below the market rate. We've been having trouble attracting officers, and we've been losing some of those officers we do hire to cities that pay more. The new 4-year contract gives our officers a 3% bump every 6 months. Missoula's crime rate is relatively flat, and we want to keep it that way. For Missoula citizens, feeling safe is a huge part of what they perceive as their quality of life, for good reason. To preserve that public trust, we need to be able to recruit qualified, dedicated officers and keep them here on the job. We've made traffic safety a priority, including DUI enforcement efforts. The bike light promotion, the reduction of crash rates on Reserve Street, and pedestrian right-of-way stings are all part of daily business at the Missoula Police Department. Our quality of life programs getting back on track with some reorganization within the department. Our volunteer program's been re-energized and looks very promising. The number of volunteers has already doubled since January, the beginning of January, my apologies. And the department, ladies and gentlemen, was awarded national recognition for efforts in enforcement of underage drinking laws in the last year. We also solved a 30-year-old homicide case with DNA evidence. Our wastewater treatment plant is meeting and even exceeding the more restrictive discharge limits set by our new permit from the Montana Department of Environmental Quality, while maintaining the lowest sewer rates among Montana cities of our size. And we continue to connect homes on septic systems to our city sewer, which protects our valley's precious water supply. Mountain Line Bus System added 5 new buses last summer that run on B20, which is 20% biodiesel fuel. Max Baucus went to bat for cities by offering several federal tax credits that make B20 affordable. Senator also visited Missoula in August for ribbon cutting for the buses, and Mountain Line ridership is up 9% over last year. We have a hunch that rising gas prices may have had something to do with that, but expanded service and increased use of the Lewis and Clark Park and Ride, I think, were also contributing factors. So folks, generally the spotlight doesn't shine on accountants, and certainly it doesn't shine on the hard workers of the Missoula Finance Department, but this year you need to know that for the 9th year in a row, the City of Missoula drew the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association. I can only imagine that convention is a riot. So what does that mean? We do accounting right in the City of Missoula. The Finance Department's work translates into exceptional stewardship of taxpayer dollars and a strong financial condition that reinforces investors' confidence in the economic strength of the city. Like most businesses, we go out for bond ratings, and our A credit rating, thanks to Finance Officer Brent Ramharder and the good folks at the City of Missoula, gives us a low interest rate that saves hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars a year. Brent, if you're here, stand up, would you? Nice work, sir. The spotlight did shine on our new aquatics facilities last summer. We opened splash decks at Franklin, Bonner, Maryland, and Westside Parks. The remarkably successful Splash Montana Water Park at Playfair Park, our year-round Currents Water Park in McCormick Park. And the grand opening of the Mobash Skate Park, which a restraining order keeps me from playing in McCormick Park, drew a crowd of 8,000 souls and Tony Hawk. We've added to our park and open space inventory with about 1.5 acres at Lefray Park, an 80-acre conservation easement on the Saul property between Kelly Island and our Tower Street conservation area, the Maloney Ranch Park, where development is near completion. We've added trails and bridges and repaired and rehabilitated older facilities. Our Office of Planning and Grants reports that Missoula approved 11 subdivisions in 2006 over 58 acres. Missoula added 487 new housing units in 2006. 350 of those were single-family homes, 48 were duplex units, and about 60 are multi-family units. The percentage of single-family homes is up over the previous 2 years, which saw extensive construction of large multi-dwelling projects that produced the majority of those housing units. By the way, there are a number of hidden gems in the Office of Planning and Grants. Among them is the Crime Victims Advocate Program, which offered direct service to 1,306 crime victims last year. Our City Council agreed with me that we need to do more to prevent the growing burden of chronic disease among our citizens. One of the best ways to prevent heart disease and the epidemic of diabetes that has doubled over the course of the past 2 decades is by promoting physical activity and better nutrition. You'll note I didn't eat lunch today. We're doing that through the efforts of our city-county health department. Our MOVE program is making the healthier choice the easier choice in our workplaces and in our schools. MOVE program works with dozens of workplaces in Missoula on adopting simple everyday practices, such as including some healthier choices in snack and vending machines, pardon me, encouraging walking breaks and making it easier to get to work by means other than a single occupant vehicle. The department's working with schools too, because the Missoula schools surveyed for overweight among their students are finding it at higher levels than the national average. St. Patrick Hospital, to its credit, is underwriting a health department position and purchasing curriculum materials for participating schools. Finally, we're trying to build on the significant investment we've made in our recreational trails and facilities, again, making the healthy choice the easy choice, and we hope the fun choice. Our redevelopment agency continued to work diligently with private partners in reclaiming an old mill site in the heart of the city. As that work progresses in 2007, Missoula will become the home of the first and most successful brownfields revitalization program in the state of Montana. Our citizens did the city proud in 2006. Whether rocking to the Rolling Stones, or filling the house for a Cat Grizz game, or helping us manage the threat of wildfire over a long, hot summer, Missoulians balanced exuberance and maturity. We showed each other respect during civic conversations. We built a great hall for the city council and the community to meet. But I'm not satisfied. In 2007, I'll ask the city council to join me in asking you to build a new headquarters for our police department. It's time our professional police force had a professional space from which to serve the public, and I won't be satisfied until it's built. In February, I'll convene a Mayor's Advisory Council on climate change and sustainability. Together, we can all make simple, meaningful choices that can have global effects. And I won't be satisfied until the city's vehicle fleet is clean burning and fuel efficient. I'll continue to work with leaders from around the state to give the cities that drive Montana's economy the chance to ask voters if they'd support a local law requiring visitors to our community to pay a fair share for the privilege. We can't continue to wait for our ship to come in while we're missing the boat. And I won't be satisfied until I can reduce your property taxes while improving services through a local option tax. And that's all I want to do, is to be able to ask you. And you ought to be able to tell me. I'll look long and hard for help in ensuring that our teachers and nurses, our cops, our firefighters, our soldiers, and anyone who dreams of home ownership has a shot at that dream right here in Missoula. I won't be satisfied until we have a meaningful, sustainable program that helps working folks buy their first home in my hometown. And finally, on a personal note, I'm going to walk more and eat less in 2007. Many of you, bless your hearts, have expressed concern over my waistline and my health, and I appreciate that. I've struggled since I was a kid with my weight. I hope to show kids in our community that simple choices and a little work can make a big difference. I won't be satisfied until I can once again enjoy one of my favorite views of Missoula from the top of our Mount Sentinel, and I want to get there by foot. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time, your commitment to our community, your energy, and your generosity. My door remains open, and as always, I'm ready to listen. Thank you, folks.
Now for some question and answers. I ask that you raise your hand, be recognized, and we'll try and get a mic out to you so that we all can hear the question. I direct it to either the mayor or the commissioner. Okay, we're open for questions. Any?
I promise I'll answer yes to the first one. How's that?
Okay.
Can I ask one? Am I loud? Mayor Engen, what has been the benefit of the impact fees for the city of Missoula?
Thanks for the question, Gary. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they've been substantial. Both we charge impact fees, ladies and gentlemen, on new construction in the city limits of Missoula. Those impact fees apply both to residential construction and to commercial construction. And depending on the size of the project, it's based on square footage and value. Those fees for a typical residential unit, I believe, Brent, you may have to nod in the affirmative for me, I want to say typically a little less than $1,000, is that right? Thank you. So we apply those to, for example, rolling stock. We can only use that money, we can only use impact fee money to pay for, in effect, the consequences of growth. So what growth traditionally hasn't paid for, we use impact fees to pay for. So if we add 100 houses somewhere and we need to make a police call, typically we'll have to have a police vehicle to do that. We can apply some of that impact fee money to rolling stock and capital improvements. We've applied that money to capital construction of fire facilities, for example. We use it in some cases in our finance office to fund positions that help manage growth. So those are some of the advantages. They're helpful. We're currently working on a transportation impact fee. And ladies and gentlemen, in my experience, transportation in Missoula is code for traffic. We're trying to find the dollars, which are scarce, to develop transportation projects. You heard me talk a little bit about Russell Street. That's an enormously expensive project. And the monies that come to us from the federal government today trickle in at a little under $2 million a year. And if you have a $30 million project, you can kind of figure out how our schedule is going to work out. It's pretty complicated. So we're always looking for alternatives and ways to supplement those federal dollars and, in some cases, state dollars.
I have a question, I guess. For Commissioner Evans, you mentioned a western bypass around the community as a very frustrating thing. Inevitably, as the community grows, we'll have to have that. If we develop a ski area that we're talking about, it'll necessitate getting traffic around the community rather than through the community. Is there hope for that in the future? Where do we go from here with that?
First, Jim, I want to correct you. I did not say anything about bypass. And the reason for that is I don't think that we have the capability of doing it. We know that there are traffic problems on the highway, and they are doing a study, and they're actually, one of the things they're looking at is the potential for a bypass. There is much land between the highway and the northwest area of the county that is 4F land, which means we cannot, it's recreation land. We cannot change that designation, as I understand it, without a congressional edict to do that. We know that we need to fix the traffic, but you have to own the land, or you have to condemn, which doesn't mean you don't pay for the land, or you have to have the capability of doing something with it between here and there. And there are folks in that general area that would have a cow if we did this. I mean, I can't tell you how upset they would be at the thought of a bypass. We've done everything we can to convince the people that there is no plans for a bypass because we don't have the capability of doing one. One of the major reasons that is taking us so long, I believe, to do the Miller Creek study and come up with a chosen alternative is because there are people who live on the west side of the highway who are terrified we're going to put traffic through their property. We're not going to do that because there isn't any money to do it and we don't own the land. And if you're going to condemn, you still have to pay at market value for the land. So the thought of a bypass, I don't believe is possible. I understand that we need traffic answers and we're working to get them, but you have to recognize also that you have to have the land, you have to have money, and we don't have either. But I would like to say that on Miller Creek, where we've had the $5 million, and FHWA has spent almost $3 million of it. I don't know how much is left, but they have come up with a proposal that they think will help that particular area of traffic. I'm not sure the city and the county are satisfied with it. And when they're all finished, if they've spent the $5 million, we may still not have an answer. And we know we need some ways in and out of those areas and on the highway. But until there's some answers and some funding mechanism, we're not going to go there. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Any other questions, concerns about Missoula City, County? There's a question here.
I'm going to kill you if you do this.
Mayor Engen and Commissioner Evans, I think I have an impossible question to answer, but it's going to have to be answered anyway. The Environmental Protection Agency or some such bunch has changed our target particulate from 10 something per something to 2.5 tiny little bits per meter, and you know, we've spent millions and millions of dollars to achieve compliance, or at least be able to continue at 10. Do either of you see any chance that the Missoula Valley will ever meet a 2.5 per meter standard?
So if it's okay with you all, I won't stand up because I'm afraid I'll launch Doug into the next facility here. So Ed, so PM 2.5, I have not spent a great deal of time studying the science. Having said that, I cannot imagine that we're going to achieve PM 2.5. What that means, we don't know either. Health Department is leaning into it, and I know that they've done some outreach in the community. The small piece of business I can take comfort in is that I know we're not alone. PM 2.5 is going to be a challenge for many communities, not only on the western side of the United States, but the east.
Ditto.
You answer the next one first.
I know that both of you referred to this a little bit in your presentations. There's been a lot of talk in 2006 about some services for city and county possibly leaving downtown. Can you guys give us an update on where that is or where it's not at, and what your plans are for those services in the downtown area?
We're not going anywhere, Matt.
We don't have any firm plans at this moment. We have discussed the potential of a public safety building and an administrative building, but we've made no decisions as to where they might be. The public safety building, in likelihood, might go out by the jail. An administrative building, and believe me, we're short of space in the courthouse. The judges say the courthouse is called the courthouse for a reason. And as the judges continue to have heavier caseloads, and believe me, they have very heavy caseloads, they need more space. And so we may do an administrative building, but I think we will be looking mostly at the downtown area for that. But until there's a firm decision made, I can't predict.
Back over here.
Has there been any consideration given to extending Russell Street to the interstate?
Yes, sir. There's a cemetery at play there. So I may leave that one for the next mayor.
That's a very smart move.
Just curious, there are numerous neighborhood intersections in town that don't have stop signs either direction. I'm just curious whether there's higher incidence of traffic accidents where there's no stop signs either way.
Engineers typically tell us no, neighbors tell us yes, so council and I try to find ourselves somewhere in the middle. There's all sorts of traffic engineering at play there, and we struggle with traffic in almost all of our neighborhoods. One of the things that appears to have been fairly successful, at least anecdotally, is instead of doing the stop signs in some cases, is doing the traffic calming circles. There are some intersections that I think require stop signs, and they're on lists all over City Hall. So it's a matter of setting priorities and hoping for the best. And once in a while we hear from a council member and the priorities change.
Before I leave today, I want to say something that I've neglected to stress, and that is we have a beautiful, wonderful community in which to live. And you can thank all of you for that, because you make it what it is. You provide the support for the governments that we need, and you make it a wonderful place that we're all happy in which to live. Thank you.
I don't know if I need a mic, but Mayor Engen, this is directed towards you about the local option tax. Is your opinion, if we were to do that, first of all, would it just be city or would it be county? And then would you see that money as being just replacement money with property tax, lowering property tax, or some of both as the same conversation goes on in the state? And additionally, if the state, if we started a sales tax, by the way, we're in a retail business and we've been in large support of a sales tax, even though it's burdensome on us, because it does exactly what you said, is all the visitors now pay for their enjoyment of Montana, and it would subsidize our taxes in. If the state passed one, would you still be inclined to be interested in a local option tax? Well, there's only 3 questions in there.
Sure. Thanks, Walt. You answered 2 of them on your way to the 3rd, so that was okay. So question 1 is what's my expectation of a local option tax?
Look, question 1, would it be, in your mind, would it be a replacement of our property tax, or would it be in addition to our property tax?
I think it's both, Walt. In Whitefish, for example, they have the best of both worlds. They not only have new revenue, and it's new revenue that increases every year, but they have the if not the lowest, at least the 2nd lowest property tax rate in the state. So it's not only replacement money, but it's new revenue. It's revenue that we don't have today. And you know, when we're talking, folks, about these multi-million-dollar transportation projects, we don't have many places to go. That's why I think that the local option makes good sense. As to whether or not a local option makes sense if there were a statewide sales tax, depends on the state's largesse. Its interest in sharing those revenues directly to the point of origin, and that's certainly a piece of the debate. And if that formula weren't equitable, it wouldn't make a great deal of sense, given that the city of Missoula's infrastructure needs are considerably different from those of Glendive, which is not to say that Glendive doesn't have needs, they're just different, so there might be some proportional differences there as well. Was there one in the middle that I missed?
Yeah, would you see that as being a city or county-wide local option
I
tax?
never speak for the county.
Would you see that as
Yeah, I would think city. That's just my hunch, Walt, but we'll reach out and get you. We're getting her anyway, we'll just go the other way. Commissioner?
No comment.
Commissioner would like to thank you all for your participation in the community again.
Barb, I'd like to ask you a question if I could. Getting back to the 2.5 micron issue, it's one of the things that I'm personally concerned about. That's why I'm a member of the Missoula Transportation Board. Air quality is getting to be a real problem in Fur Valley and Missoula County, especially with the increase in vehicle miles traveled every day. I'm interested in what you might do as elected leaders in our community to address that problem of ever-increasing vehicle miles traveled. I think it's affecting the quality of our health, and I think it's affecting the quality of a prosperous economic environment. In my estimation, public transportation is a big part of the answer, and I want to know what you see as your support level for solving this problem of increasing VMT and air pollution.
Sure. Andy, I don't have a pat or a simple answer. I doubt that there are many folks in the room who wouldn't support trying to figure out a way to reduce emissions and temper VMT for lots of reasons. The difficulty is we're we're culturally averse to making some of those changes, and I think we're economically averse to making some of those changes. So what we can do, I think, is chip away at it, and I think the work that you and the folks on the Urban Transportation Board do, the work that happens in our transportation committees, the work that's happening with the Parking Commission, with Mr. TMA, the folks at the county, we're all trying to chip away at this and at least trying to create a backbone for alternative transportation that makes some sense in the long term. And we're seeing some successes there. But at the same time, we're subsidizing, as you know, we're subsidizing our bus service, which is our equivalent of mass transit, at a pretty remarkable rate, and it's enormously expensive. I think we've made a strong commitment to do that. I don't sense that commitment's going away, but I'm not sure what the catalyst for a sudden dramatic change might be, unless it's $10 a gallon gasoline. We saw a little bit of that over the course of the last year. That said, I think we certainly want to continue to support alternatives. We try to do that. In fact, considering alternatives that in some cases might not seem practical today, but may have real benefit in the future, depending on some economies of scale. The rail stuff that I know you're interested in is a piece of that puzzle, and there's some energy behind that. Whether there's political will behind it and the dollars to support that political will is another question.
You know, Andy, I'd really be surprised if you hadn't asked that question, because I know you'd love to gouge me on this. This is an aging population worldwide, but certainly in Missoula we have an aging population, and not everybody can ride their bike or walk to work, and not everybody wants to take the bus. So what I support is a multimodal transportation model where everybody does what they can. And personally, I drive a vehicle it isn't a biodiesel vehicle, but it is a new vehicle, and it is good for its emissions. And I think the majority of the people do try and drive cars that are efficient. So if they can show us that rail is feasible and financially possible for the public, I'd be happy to do what I can in helping on that. But the last time we looked at rail, and admittedly that was many years ago, MRL said it would cost $1 million a mile and $1 million a car, because the rails that they have are for freight, they're not for humans. So I think at the time, I think they figured it would cost $30 a person per way. Well, nobody can afford that. But if they get it to the point where it is feasible and you can afford to do it, I would expect to see a lot of the traffic that comes from the Bitterroot into Missoula and vice versa using the rail. I personally support, when I go to Washington, D.C., I wouldn't drive a car for any amount of money. I get on the metro or I take a cab, which may not help the air, but it helps me a lot. So I understand the need for clearing the air, and we've done a tremendous amount of that over the years. We have a much cleaner facility to the west. We have cars that are better, more fuel efficient and less emissions. We use different ice controls on the roads and on the hills. We don't use sand, which air and trained sand can make for bad air. Will we ever make the 2.5? I don't know. I have no idea. And if we do, it will probably take a lot of effort on a lot of people's part, and it may not make them very happy.
Any other questions?
This is a question for the mayor. We started this meeting off today with the Pledge of Allegiance, and this large group seemed to pull that off without a hitch. And I was just wondering why it takes so much debate and so much time for the city council to try to do the same thing. They're a lot smaller groups.
You know, since I became mayor, we've said the pledge at every meeting I've presided over, so I'll have you ask the council that question. I don't speak for them on this one.
I have another question. I'd like to ask a question about affordable housing, but I don't know what to ask. It seems like we make a lot of changes to budget that seem essential to have programs to help us build adequate facilities, but all those increase the cost quite a bit. If you could just, both of you, in just a minute or two, talk a little bit about affordable housing, I'd appreciate it.
In a minute or two, huh? You know, Jim, that continues to be the fine line we walk, and I think we stumble over it most of the time. I don't have a brilliant way to get there. The closest I can come is to find program money that assists first-time home buyers get over that hump of closing costs, down payment. I think that's one of the ways that we can get to some level of affordability for qualified buyers. Beyond that, some of the land use techniques we use create enough tension that we don't really deliver affordability through those methods. But that doesn't mean there aren't some alternatives there to consider or reconsider. Ultimately, we've got expensive land and a great place to live, and it's tough to swim against that complicated market force. So I wish I had better answers, but we're going to spend as much time as we can trying to figure out something.
The commissioners have been concerned about affordable housing for many years, and if you will look at the brochure that's on your place, you will see some pictures of Canyon Creek Village. The way we were able to accomplish that, which in my mind is one of the more affordable units in town, was we owned the land. We could decide what went on around it because we'd be the only ones that could protest any zoning. There were a few houses around it to protest, few people to fuss. And so we created a zoning district that was able to allow this kind of housing. And in order to do that, the cost of land certainly comes into play. And in order to make it feasible for a developer to develop anything, they have to make enough money to make it pay. Well, you can't buy a lot at $65,000 to whatever $1,000 it cost you for a lot and still put a house on it with the cost of materials that is going to make it possible to sell it as affordable housing. So you have to give the density in place of that so that they make enough money to make it pay. Well, the city, I think, tried that. You can tell me I'm wrong. When they tried infill, well, it was a great idea on paper, but the people who lived around it didn't like it. So if you're going to be successful, you have to have some land that's a reasonable price. You have to have people outside of that particular area so that there's nobody to protest the zoning, because there's been proposals in the past that would have made more affordable housing. And the people in the zoning district say, no, 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 they don't want it. So it's a real problem to try and find a fine line. The price of land is extremely high. I wouldn't say there's an extreme amount of land available. We live in a kind of an area surrounded by the mountains that's sort of limited. So there just isn't enough land, and what there is, they're not selling at a reasonable price. So affordable housing, Commissioner Terry is very concerned about it, Commissioner Curtis is concerned about it, but we don't have a magic bullet, and if somebody has one, we'd sure like to hear it. Thank you.
No, just one more sort of addition to that. One of the things that I think is an opportunity for us is to look at places that make sense for real urban density. Downtown continues to be one of those spots, and there's some opportunity for shared walls and the application of existing infrastructure that I think makes real sense and it works in other communities. So we'll continue to chip away at that as well.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Commissioner, for your words today. We'd like to move on now with some other special military presentations. To lead us through this, I'd like to introduce Susan Ryan. Susan was born in Missoula, currently lives in Whitefish. She is the chair of a committee in Montana called Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve, ESGR. This Department of Defense organization is charged with gaining and maintaining support by employers for Guard and Reserve members. Montana's ESGR committee consists of volunteers throughout the state who interface with both employers and military. They recognize that employers and Guard and Reserve organizations share a common valued resource. Susan and ESGR committee strive to promote harmonious relationships, and through events like this, highlight businesses, public services, and organizations who demonstrate above and beyond support for the Guard and Reserve. Please welcome Susan.
Thank you, Doug. That was half my speech. I'm always glad to get back to my hometown, and I always appreciate any opportunity to highlight community leaders and business organizations that provide truly exemplary support to the Guard and Reserve. Now, Doug mentioned that our committee, which is a Department of Defense organization, consists of volunteers. And to support this event today, we have a few volunteers with us that I'd like to have stand and be recognized. So, ESGR volunteers, just please stand up for a second. Many of you know we have an additional event, an extension of this luncheon that's going on following this at the airport. Supported by the Montana National Guard, ESGR is sponsoring a boss lift. So for those of you who registered, the National Guard brought a Chinook helicopter and a Black Hawk, and we'll be flying right after this and doing a regional tour of the Missoula area. I also want to mention, talking about the boss lift, just off notes for a second, that much of the equipment and most of the flying crews that will be flying, those of you who signed up this afternoon, have been to Iraq and back. And actually that speaks for a lot of the Montana National Guard, Army Reserve, Navy Reserve, Marine Corps Reserve, in Montana. Many of the organizations have been deployed, as a lot of you employers already know. Since 9/11, over 500,000 Guard and Reserve members have been mobilized. As employers of some of these, you well know there are periods of time you're required to share your employee with the government. Involuntary activations are challenging for the individual, concerned families, and employers. All of us appreciate your sacrifices, recognize your willingness to share a precious resource, and commend the above and beyond business policies many activate when an employee temporarily converts to his military role to execute military missions. And I'd like to go off notes again for just a second and ask, because there are a lot of you in the audience today, for those who currently serve in the Guard or Reserves, whether you're in uniform right now or in civilian clothes, please just stand up for a minute and be recognized. Thank you for your service. Representing senior military leadership from Washington, D.C., we invited the Deputy Commanding General of the U.S. Army Reserve Command, Major General Alan Bell, to this State of Missoula annual event. A significant percent of the 1 million Guard and Reserve forces come from the Army Reserve. Who better to help provide a snapshot of the big picture to help us understand why employer support of the Guard and Reserve is so critical to our nation's defense. General Bell's 30-year career spans a dizzying breadth of assignments, experiences, and recognition. He is one of America's senior military leaders and I'm very pleased that he could join us today. Please help me welcome him to Missoula's State of the Union event.
A couple thank yous first. First, I want to thank you for not making me part of the question and answer period. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Also, what's absolutely amazing to me, first, I'm from the South, so every word in the South has at least 2 syllables, so you'll have to kind of bear with me a little bit. But what's absolutely amazing to me is a cell phone has not gone off in this room in the last hour and a half, and I thank you for that. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. I guess it speaks tremendous amounts for this, as aptly put, beautiful and wonderful community in which you live, and it certainly is. So thank you for inviting me here. It's a real honor to be here and a real pleasure to be among you today. We're here today to honor those employers that go above and beyond the call of duty to support our citizen soldiers. And I, like General Mosley, am a citizen soldier. I'm a cop by profession. I just happen to be on active duty doing what they asked me to do. But to my brethren out there, I'm one of y'all and damn proud of it. A minute ago, Susan asked the current members of the armed forces to stand up. I would now like to see the veterans in here. Would you stand up, please, our veterans in here? Go up. One of the real joys of my job, and Susan did me a favor in that she said I'd been serving for 30 years. I've really been serving for 38. I'm a lot older than I want to be. But one of the real pleasures of serving for 38 years is the absolute joy of getting up any day and putting on this uniform that I'm so proud of, and being able to walk into a National Guard Armory or an Army Reserve Center or a center that houses our Air Force and Navy and Coast Guard brethren and Marines. There it is. All right, we got it. Okay. But to be able to walk into those buildings and to be with my heroes. What an incredible, incredible privilege that is. 38 years worth of getting up there, putting on a uniform and walking in any reserve center and National Guard Armory in this nation and being among heroes. But within that heroes, I have to include another group of heroes of mine, and I'd like them to stand, please, and that is our fire and police officers. Would you all stand up, please? Now, my speech writers in D.C. always write all kinds of beautiful speeches, and I make them crazy because I never, ever use them. Because I enjoy talking to soldiers, and I enjoy talking to families and employers. But I don't like to make speeches. I just like to kind of talk to you about what's going on, and I will take that privilege today if you'll allow me, so I can kind of throw all these nice notes away. I get the opportunity to visit our soldiers all over this world, and I've been with them in some of the most god-awful places that these young men and women have served at. And when I go to talk to those soldiers, I always get in personal conversations with them, and what they talk about when they're in theater, when they're in Afghanistan and Iraq and Djibouti and the other hellholes around the earth right now. What they talk about are their families and their employers. Their families and their employers. They don't talk about what's going on in a combat situation right then or what's happening that particular day with operations. They talk about their families and they talk about their employers, and that's you. And they'll drag pictures out and they'll drag letters out from their employers, and they'll tell me about all the wonderful things that their co-workers and their employers are doing for them. And that's why we're here today, is to say thank you for that. You look at the variety of different ways that our nation has risen to take care of our soldiers and our employers especially. They've maintained salaries in a number of different cases. They've maintained benefits where those benefits needed to remain for the soldiers' families. They've gone to our soldiers' houses and fixed their houses when the soldiers deployed. They've taken their children to church and to soccer games and baseball games. all those things to add a bit of normalcy to that soldier's life that has been totally turned upside down as he's gone off to serve his country. And that's the history of this great nation. I think we've always done that, but I think we've never done it better than we're doing it right now. You know, years, I guess 60-something years ago, we mobilized most of this nation, and that group went off and they became the greatest generation. Today, we mobilize a very small number of our population, less than 1%. Less than 1% of our nation is serving in our military. And they're doing our fighting for us, and they're defending those things that we hold so sacred. They're ensuring that we can have wonderful communities, and we can continue to do the things we do as Americans, and continue to have the rights and privileges we have. And God bless them for it. But to do that, it takes you. It takes you as strong families, it takes you as strong communities, it takes you as dedicated and determined employers to see that those soldiers will be taken care of. And I think, sadly to say, I think we're just at the beginning of what we're facing. And I think most of us have come to realize that. This is not a war with Iraq or a war with Afghanistan or anywhere else we fight. This is a war on terrorism. And it's a war that we have to win. And it's a war that we will win with our active forces and our reserve forces. Our reserve forces we've called on in unprecedented numbers to do things they've never had to do before. General Mosley and I remember, as will do many of you in this room, remember the days where we were a reserve force. And it meant 2 weeks in the summer and 2 days a month. And we are now an operational force. Our Army cannot fight without us. They cannot go anywhere in the world without the soldiers and sailors and airmen, Marine, and the Coast Guard that you're sitting in this room today. So that puts the burden on us, the community, to ensure that that happens and to ensure that those fine young Americans are taken care of and their families are cared for and their jobs are secure. And again, that's what you do. I'm not sure we have it right or not. You know, we've pretty well exhausted our our number of reserve forces. You talk to anybody in the Guard, anybody in the Army Reserve, and we'll tell you that we have just about deployed every soldier we have. Yet the war goes on. And so we've got to find other ways to meet the needs of our nation. And we're looking for our employers to understand that and to help us through that and give us ideas to make it less painful and more predictable for our soldiers, our families, and our employers. And over the next number of months, we will be seeking, that's one of the Georgia words. We'll be seeking your advice and your counsel, the employers in here, on ways to make this work for you and make it work for our soldiers as well. And that's a pretty daunting task. But we've got to continue to keep our Army strong, and the only way we keep our Army and our fighting forces strong is from our communities, because that's where it all started back 300-something years ago. So thank you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for the tremendous service that you provide to our soldiers. You are also my heroes, very much so. I got to tell you one story before I leave. I'm going to go off track a little bit, but get back on track. But I got to tell you an experience that I had, because I think it speaks volumes to this great nation and what it's all about. Susan told me a little earlier that this state has the highest per capita of veterans of any state in the nation. That's pretty cool. That's pretty neat. There's a real sense of service that comes out of this state. I had the opportunity last June the 6th, D-Day, to represent the United States government at the commemorative celebration in St. Mary de Lys, France. I don't know if we have any World War II veterans in here, but most of us in this room are either the sons and daughters or the children or grandchildren of those veterans. St. Mary de Lys, France was the first town liberated on D-Day. It's on the western Normandy coast of France. They're a beautiful little town. If you all have seen the movie The Longest Day, that's St. Mary de Lys. That's what that movie is all about. At the time, I was commanding a large reserve command in the southeast, and within that command, I had 3 rigger companies. And for Army guys, riggers are paratroopers. They're the guys that rig the stuff and throw it and then themselves out of the plane. So we needed a bunch of paratroopers, so I rounded up about 60 of my paratroopers. And we went up to Dover Air Force Base and hooked up with our National Guard, our Air Guard brethren. And then from there, we flew to Canada, and we picked up some of our Canadian paratrooper brethren. And then from there we flew to England, and we trained a few days with the Brits. Okay, so we're still, at this point, we're still pretty much on an English type thing. We still understand each other. From there we flew into St. Mary-de-Lys, France, and we met up with the French paratroopers, and who should show up but the German paratroopers, who are our dear friends now. So we had a little paratrooper thing going on. So at this point, we had about 200 paratroopers. Along with me, I had taken about 25 or 30 veterans from the 507th and 508th Parachute Infantry Regiments. And those of you that know your history know those were the guys that landed in St. Mary-de-Lys on D-Day. I mean, some for real, as Tom Brokaw would say, the greatest generation, some tremendous heroes. And these old men, now in their 80s, were young 18, 19, 20-year-old privates back then, back 62, almost 63 years ago now. And we spent the week with them, and we went around to the various battle sites. And these old soldiers would, I mean, in that area, France hasn't changed a bit in 62 years. And they could actually take you to the rock that they hid behind as they fought the Germans who were behind that other rock over there. I mean, just an incredible experience. And so our young soldiers went around, and we visited the cemetery at Normandy where 10,000 great Americans were buried, and spent the whole day, these 2 groups, our young soldiers who are Iraqi and Afghanistan veterans, and our old soldiers who saved the world back so many years ago. The last day we were there, we did a commemorative jump into the actual battlefield, or the actual site that these soldiers had jumped into 62 years before. They didn't jump with us as much as they wanted to. But a few of them did a couple days later, as a matter of fact. Some of these folks are just amazing. And this area of France absolutely loves Americans. I mean, they love Americans. So if you ever hear that the French don't love us, don't believe it for a minute. That's that big city stuff. Western France loves Americans, and you can't go to a house in that area that you don't see an American flag flying. So on the day of this commemorative jump, literally, there must have been 1,000 Frenchmen from this very remote area of France. And the American ambassador was there, and a number of French very senior politicians were there. And in the middle of this open field where this jump was made, there's a statue that was erected by the Americans a number of years ago called the Iron Mike statue. And those who've been to Fort Bragg, there's a similar statue in the middle of Fort Bragg. So we do the jump in, and then we move over to the Iron Mike statue, and we place a couple of commemorative wreaths. And then we play the national anthem, and we play the French national anthem, and a lot of formal things take place. At the end of that, again, the crowd kind of hung around, and one of my young NCOs came up and said, "Listen, one of our soldiers just received his master jump wings. Would you mind pinning them on him?" I said, "I'd love to." And then one of the Brits comes up with a very British accent, and he says, "General, one of our young soldiers has just received orders to be promoted to corporal. Would you promote him?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to do that." I said, "Tell you what, let's line up here in front of the Iron Mike statue, Americans on the left of me, Brits on the right of me, and we'll do this ceremony." And the crowd is trying to figure out what's going on, because none of them were speaking English as well as we were. And so they gather around us, and then right on either side of me were these World War II veterans, about 25 or 30 of them, who had been there for the ceremony. And I do the promotion, and then I do the wing pinning. And I said, God, what an opportunity to say the Soldier's Creed. Here we are in one of the most famous battlefields on the face of the earth. And I think it'd be really neat to say the Soldier's Creed. And for those, I'll recite it to you just so you know what it is. It says, "I'm an American soldier, I'm a warrior and a member of a team. I serve the people of the United States and live the Army values. I always place the mission first, I'll never accept defeat, I'll never quit, and I'll never leave a fallen comrade. I am disciplined, physically and mentally tough, trained and proficient in my warrior tasks and drills. I always maintain my arms, my equipment, and myself. I'm an expert and I'm a professional. I stand ready to deploy, engage, and destroy the enemies of the United States of America in close combat. I'm a guardian of freedom and the American way of life. I'm an American soldier. So we recited that, and I would say a segment of it, and then our soldiers would repeat it. And the Brits are standing there, and they understood English, so they began to say it with us. And the Germans and the French are kind of, they knew it was a solemn moment, so they just kind of stood there and listened. But as we were doing this, I began to look at our veterans on either side of me, and I saw tears coming down their eyes. What is this all about? So after it was all over, I gathered them in a circle. I said, guys, what's that all about? They said, that's the greatest thing we ever heard. They said, we really wish we would have had that type of creed when we were soldiers. And you could see how proud they were of our young American soldiers. And then they began to talk to me more. And what I began to realize is all week long, our young soldiers, these young soldiers sitting among you today, were hero worshiping these greatest generation that had served their nation so many years ago and made possible all the things that we have today. But what I didn't see was that these old soldiers, their heroes had become the soldiers they were with. They now labeled us as the greatest generation. These soldiers you see sitting among you, and sailors and airmen and Marines. Now stop and think of the significance of that. Here's a group of Americans that saved this nation. And before anybody else, they understand how significant this fight is we're in, and the tremendous value that these young Americans who are serving today add to that fight, and what heroes they are. They know you to be the next greatest generation. And they do that because of the people sitting in this room that allow us to continue to serve our nation, to serve our community, to serve our families, and to serve our God. So again, I thank you for that. I thank you for giving me this wonderful opportunity to come to this great community and this great state. And I ask very strongly for your continued support of our armed services and the great people that serve among it. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Just a couple of months ago, 15 business owners stood in the Oval Office with President Bush in recognition of their selection as Freedom Award winners. This is the highest Department of Defense award for employer support. Today, we want to recognize some of Montana's best employers who exemplify above and beyond support to their employees who serve in the Guard and Reserve. We're going to call up a group of individuals representing businesses and organizations here in Missoula and ask them to come right over here. And right now I'm going to ask Major General Bell, Major General Mosley, Commanding General of our Montana National Guard, and Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez from the Senior Navy Reserve Commander out of Helena, to join me as we make short presentations to some of the finest employers who live and work right here in Missoula. So let's just go right down over here, please. Tina Whitaker, Montana's ESGR Executive Director, then is going to be the quick moderator for us for these awards.
Missoula community, thank you very much for inviting us to participate in this event. Can't thank the Chamber enough. To get a large group of employers together, business leaders from your community, is an event noteworthy, and I want to thank Nicole and Kim Latrio and Carrie Monberg for inviting us into your community. Supportive employers are critical to maintaining the strength and readiness of our National Guard and Reserve forces, as you've heard from Susan and General Bell. Our program recognizes deserving employers, not frequently enough, of the goodwill that they share with the employees that we share with the community. The My Boss is a Patriot Award is the award that a service member personally recognizes his or her supervisor, boss, or employer at large. And at this time, I'd like to call up Jim Holloran, formerly of Fire Protection Services, now with Montana Fire Sprinklers, nominated by service member Ryan Mooney, Watkinson Shepherd Trucking, Vince Jakubowski, nominated by his service member Jeff Smith, Missoula Bali Bear Mouth Express, Phil Shepherd will be accepting the award on behalf of Brian Tripp, who was nominated by Robin Titus, GlaxoSmithKline, and go ahead, service member, if you are with your employer, please accommodate your employer up to the front. GlaxoSmithKline Biologicals from Hamilton, Jory Baldridge will be receiving the award for the employer, nominated by Captain Melinda Hutton. And I don't know if Mackenzie River Pizza, if Ryan Fuller, Melissa Zarth, are you present today? They were nominated also from your community. I need to let you know I've been the full-time support for our volunteer community committee, ESGR, since 2004. And you won't read about it all the time in your press, but Missoula has the highest percentage of awards in your community. And I wish that I could dictate what the media will print, but I don't get that liberty. But you guys have the greatest support because the service members that work and live in your community recognize that with their bosses. So you need to know that. This is the third time we've been in Missoula because you guys have some awesome support in your community, and we just can't say it enough. Our next award is called the Above and Beyond Award, and there is also a My Boss is a Patriot. For Montana Ace Hardware, Steve Weiler and Don Pierce will be accepting this award on behalf of Stu and Meg Weiss. This employer has ensured that their human resource policy is in sync with the USERRA, Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act, that is the law, their HR policy is in unison with that, as most employers are. They also have an active program that maintains contact with their soldier, service member, sailor, Marine, whoever is under their employment, if and when they're deployed or mobilized. They also stay in contact with the family member. And in 2004, when I first met Gwen Pierce, who's not here, she had been recognized as a Patriot Award winner. They had instituted a lawn care service for the families of service members who had been deployed. And so we'd like to recognize them for their above and beyond service to their employees. Today, our committee is recognizing the highest level of award that we can honor an employer under our ESGR banner. It's called the Pro Patria Award. And receiving this, along with an Above and Beyond Award for the Missoula Police Department, is Chief Rusty Wickman, Dick Lewis, and Mark Muir. They currently employ 10 Guard Reserve members. Several of these members deployed in 2004, 2005 in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, and/or Operation Enduring Freedom. And if you don't know the difference between that, Operation Iraqi Freedom is you go to Iraq, and anything else is support for INCONAS, OCONAS. I happen to know Major Colin Rose, who's under the National Guard banner, has been to Afghanistan, training them to support themselves in those countries. And they rely on us because we have the means and the know-how to get it done. Upon return, many of these were called up for state active duty, as you know, for Hurricane Katrina. Upon return, the City of Missoula and the Missoula Police Department implemented an administrative leave policy above and beyond what was on the books when they left to cover 30 of the 45 days these service members were deployed, mobilized down to Louisiana area with less than 4 days notice. And so that's when they just take out your law enforcement, your fireman, or your medical service person with those skills, and they take them down and they share them with somebody else. And there's a grateful community down in the Louisiana, Mississippi area. And they were also a contender for the 2006 Secretary of Defense Freedom Award, which is a national award, and we hope that we'll see them as a contender again this year. The 5-star statement of support. On the tabletop, you may have noticed that there is a centerpiece that talks about this program. And this is a means where an employer or business can publicly demonstrate their statement of support. We have 4 employers: Montana Ace Hardware, Missoula Police Department, City of Missoula, and the Missoula Chamber of Commerce, who have demonstrated this kind of support in endorsing and supporting Guard and Reserve members. And with Steve Weiler, Don Pierce come up from Montana Ace Hardware to receive their 5-star. Missoula Police Department, Police Chief, City of Missoula, Mayor, would you come and receive this award for your city? And Missoula Chamber of Commerce, Julie, would you please come down and receive this award?
Wide angle.
And again, on the tabletop, for those of you that are interested in signing a statement similar, we know that you already support your Guard and Reserve employees. What we'd like to do is offer you the opportunity to publicly show that support in such a statement. So we have some over here in the corner, and at your convenience, if you'd like, we would be available to help you sign a 2-3 level statement of support. Our last award is to recognize somebody who we couldn't have done this without. And Carrie Weinberg, would you please step forward? The 7 Seals Award is an award for a volunteer, typically one who's already a member of our ESGR committee, so you've been recruited, Carrie. The 7 Seals Award lives up to its name, and it doesn't matter if it's a soldier or a sailor or a Marine Corps airman. For all reserve component services, Kerry is willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that that community support is in place, and he can't do it without your support. So thank you very much, Missoula and Kerry. That concludes our awards.
I'd like to extend thank you to Dan, Carlino, Jenny, and Callie, and all the DoubleTree staff for a wonderful lunch. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kim Luttrell, Nicole Childry, and all the chamber staff for assisting the community, the Chamber Affairs community in presenting this luncheon today. Thank you. Congratulations to the award winners. I've been told that the time is limited for the helicopter rides. If any of you are involved in that, to please proceed to the Museum of Mountain Flying for a safety briefing and to fly. Thank you very much for attending.
I am. It was. Thanks for coming out.